America's best days are yet to come. That's because conservatives like you know and live the values our great country was built on. The Heritage Foundation exists to make sure your voice is heard in the D.C. swamp each day, shining the light on a bright future. The Heritage Foundation stands for your values and won't give up the fight because they know you never will. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Welcome to the program. Man, oh, Manischewitz, lots cooking out there. First thing I want to do, because this is breaking. Elise Stefanik is so fantastic, the representative from New York. She needs to run for governor. She needs to run for governor. And I see her one day, maybe even as president of the United States. What do you think of that? I really do. And so she receives apparently a text or something in her inbox from a New York Times reporter who's trying to do a hit on her on behalf of the Mamdani campaign. You know, trying to turn criticism of him as a jihadist Islamist into Islamophobia. And that, of course, is part of the game. And so she writes, and I've just posted this to the New York Times so-called reporter, regarding your question that popped into our inbox, quote, I'm a reporter for the Times, that was the person who sent it, and I'm writing about Stefanik's comments in response to Mamdani's Fox News interview. Mamdani's campaign said that her comments calling him a jihadist were Islamophobic. Please let me know if you want to respond. Why, yes, Emma. I do want to respond, says Elise Stefanik. Please print in full. I call Zohran Mamdani a jihadist because he is. Zohran Mamdani is a raging anti-Semite. Mamdani is the definition of a jihadist as he supports Hamas terrorists, which he did as recently as yesterday when he refused to call for Hamas terrorists to put down their arms. The same Hamas terrorist group that slaughtered civilians, including New Yorkers, on October 7, 2023. He's Kathy Hochul's endorsed jihadist communist who she has empowered to destroy New York City. It's why the New York State Democrat Party chair refuses to support him. It's why multiple Democrat members of Congress refuse to support him. It's why Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries have still not endorsed him, because Zohran is a jihadist who will destroy New York. Thank you. And that's how you respond, by the way, to the press when they're trying to create a narrative. She's not Islamophobic. He's an Islamist jihadist and a Marxist and a Jew hater. That's the problem. That's the problem. I'm calling him out. You see the stereotype and the bigotry, the racism of this reporter, Emma, for the New York Times? the implication is all Muslims then are jihadists, Islamists. Right? And they're not. They're absolutely not. But that is the cover that the New York Slimes wishes to give him, just as the New York Slimes gave cover to Castro. I find it interesting, Mr. Producer. I believe I'm the only one who said that this guy reminds me of Fidel Castro. And the New York Times reporting reminds me of how they treated Castro. So some guy on Fox today, working some beat, says exactly the same thing. Folks, this is a very influential program. The plagiarists love it. They love it, they love it, and they love it. Because that's what they do. They plagiarize, verbally and in writing. All right, let's get to this. What happened here? I lost all of them? Okay, bear with me, folks. Yeah, I guess I did. All right, we will continue anyway. John Bolton was indicted on 18 counts. Now, what happened here? It must be retribution. No, it's not retribution. I worked for three cabinet secretaries and one assistant to the President of the United States, who was head of presidential personnel and became Secretary of the Navy. All fantastic people. I never wrote a book about any of them. I never wrote a book about my times with them. I certainly never would have written a book that included classified information. In at least two of my positions, I had access to all kinds of classified information, and one, as Chief of Staff to the Attorney General, I had access to all of it. And you've never heard me talk about classified information, ever. I've written 11 books, all New York Times bestsellers, 9 of them #1. None of them are quote-unquote tell-all books. None of them contain classified information or any government documents I had access to. And the reason's very simple. I was raised properly. It's an issue of what we call ethics. Lawyers have codes of conduct as well. I'm a lawyer. Bolton's a lawyer. But even more, you know, when I'm invited to serve as a chief of staff to Attorney General or to work for a president of the United States at the White House or somebody else, they're putting their trust and faith in me. It is my duty to uphold that trust and faith, to be loyal to that person, and to have the class and the character to do so. If there comes a time when I or others feel they can't, then they quietly move along. I never felt that. All the people I worked for, from President Reagan on down, were fantastic, ethical, exceptional. Bolton decided he would write a book, and he wrote a book that contained classified information, and he didn't wait for the process for all the intelligence entities within the government to approve it. He knew better. I worked at the Justice Department with him under Reagan. He was the National Security Advisor under Trump. He knew better than to do that. A federal judge, Royce Lamberth, when the Trump administration went in for an injunction, he didn't grant it because he said it's too late. All the information's out. They're publishing it. And he said, he looked at the materials in camera, that is, in his own chambers, and there was no question that this information was significant to the nation's national security. And there's no question that Bolton took it upon himself to short-circuit the process. He took the risk. He also created a risk for the nation. And whatever happens from there will be up to the Department of Justice. So what happened? Biden comes in and drops the case, drops the investigation, the grand jury investigation, drops it. But this case involves even more than those documents. This case involves additional documents. 8 years in the Reagan administration, I never took home classified information. 8 years. When I left the Reagan administration, I never took home classified information. I knew I wasn't supposed to. It was all around me. I had to deal with it throughout the Department of Justice. But the rules are the rules. And so what do we have here? Fox News ex-National Security Advisor John Bolton indicted with improper handling of classified information. Indicted on 18 counts by a federal grand jury in Maryland. According to the indictment, Bolton was indicted on 8 counts of transmission of national defense information, 10 counts of retention of national defense information. Quote, from on or about April 9, 2018 through at least on or about August 22, 2025, Bolton abused his position as National Security Advisor by sharing more than 1,000 pages of information about his day-to-day activities as the National Security Advisor, including information relating to the national defense, which was classified up to top secret SCI level, with 2 unauthorized individuals, namely individuals 1 and 2, the indictment reads. Bolton also unlawfully retained documents, writings, and notes relating to the national defense, including information classified up to top secret /SCI at his home in Montgomery County, Maryland. Now, these documents were transmitted by him to 2 individuals unauthorized to view classified documents. They may have been family members. I don't know who they were, but it doesn't matter. These documents, according to the indictment, revealed intelligence about future attacks by an adversarial group in another country, a liaison partner sharing sensitive information with the U.S. intel community, intelligence that a foreign adversary was planning a missile launch in the future, a covert action in a foreign country that was related to sensitive intergovernmental actions, sensitive sources and methods used to collect human intelligence, a big deal, intelligence about an adversary's knowledge of planned U.S. actions, intelligence about an adversary's plans for attacks conducted against U.S. forces in another country. Human intel, it goes on and on and on. The documents were classified top secret. Now, when they're classified that way, they also have a special cover that make it clear what it is. Red and white cover. As for the document he allegedly retained, one document revealed intelligence about a future attack by an adversarial group in another country. Other documents revealed, and I just read a lot of it to you, but they're significant documents. The documents range from secret to top secret. The FBI's investigation revealed that John Bolton allegedly transmitted top secret information using personal online accounts, retained said documents in his house in direct violation of federal law, said Kash Patel. The case was based on meticulous work from dedicated career professionals at the FBI who followed the facts without fear or favor. Weaponization of justice won't be tolerated, and this FBI will stop at nothing to bring justice anyone who threatens our national security. Bolton's Maryland home had been raided by FBI agents in August. This search was focused on classified documents believed that Bolton possessed. Beyond the book, the list of more than a dozen items seized from the Bethesda, Maryland home of President Donald Trump's former national security advisor was included in a search warrant document filed with the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland. Now, among the technology seized from Bolton's home were 2 iPhones, a red one with 2 camera lenses and a black one in a black case, and 3 computers, including, it explains what they were. We don't really care. They also seized a hard drive, 2 SanDisk 64-gigabyte USB drives also. The list shows the FBI also took a white binder labeled Statements and Reflections to Allied Strikes, quote-unquote, and typed documents in folders labeled Trump 1-15. 4 boxes containing what federal officials called printed daily activities also were hauled from Bolton's home, according to the documents. The August 22 FBI raid was linked to a probe of mishandling classified documents. Why the hell did he do this? I'm just wondering why. Why did he take all this with him? I can't give you any more details than that, but let's just say that John Bolton really had some nerve to attack Trump over his handling of classified information, a source told Fox News Digital. A source familiar with early stages of the investigation told Fox News Digital that CIA Director John Ratcliffe provided Patel with limited access to U.S. intel that serves as the basis for the search warrant. The source told Fox News Digital that the evidence justified the raid on Bolton's home. The probe into Bolton's alleged retention of classified documents was first launched years ago, later shut down by the Biden regime for political reasons, according to a senior U.S. official. I don't doubt that. And it goes on. Well, the reason I'm reading you this, and there's much more I could read you, I've read you about 20% of this article, is you're going to hear that this was retribution and so forth. No, this has nothing to do with retribution. This is not a small matter. It is a massive matter for a former national security advisor to do this. And even more than that, we're talking about a huge amount of secret and top secret information brazenly retrieved or taken and brazenly mishandled by somebody who's read into these programs and who is trained and taught, and he has been over the decades, on how to use these documents. So you're not talking about one document maybe that was mishandled, stuck in a briefcase or a small file. No, you're talking about scores of documents here. Lots of information. I don't wish this on anybody. I really don't. I'm not giddy about this. I'm not happy about this. It's too bad. I've known John Bolton for decades. But what he did here is inexcusable. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. Let's go to number 20, Mr. Producer. So we have this guy, Jamie Raskin, who is endlessly on CNN and MSNBC and Airport Radar and, you know, OBGYN sonograms. Jamie the Red. Jamie's father was, in fact, a old Soviet supporter. He was. Founded the Institute for Policy Studies. You can dig it all up yourself. Now, when we come back, I want to play a clip for him, of him, because he says everyone can see the irony of Trump prosecuting Bolton for mishandling classified documents. Trump didn't mishandle classified documents. Once again, President of the United States is the executive branch. He has the power to decide what is or is not classified. He doesn't have to follow any procedures by any department or bureaucracy or any inferior employee, whether Congress passes a law or not. The Constitution trumps it all. And I know for some this is controversial, especially former federal prosecutors, but I don't give a damn what they think. I know. I want to resolve this and address this when we return. I'll be right back. We're coming upon the 250th birthday of the United States, and it has me thinking, what will America look like 250 years from now? My friends at the Heritage Foundation want to know what you think. What policies should America prioritize? What principles should carry us into the decades ahead? As America enters a new golden age, Heritage recognizes that this is the time to take stock and to be intentional about how we shape the future of America. And they can't do it without your input. So please go to heritage.org/LEVIN and let them know what you think is important. Without patriots like you stepping up and speaking up for what you believe in, America as we know it can't survive for another 250 years. Please go to heritage.org/LEVIN heritage.org/Levin, heritage.org/Levin. Take the survey on America's future. This survey takes less than 10 minutes to complete, but it is critical for making sure that the America we pass on to future generations is an America we're proud of. Go to heritage.org/Levin today. That's heritage.org/Levin. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation.
You're listening to Denali, the Great One.
The Great One.
And you can call in now, 877-381-3811.
All right, folks, as I said, we have Jamie the Red Raskin. Let's listen to this buffoon. Cut 20, go.
Everybody can see the irony of President Trump instigating a prosecution against Bolton for mishandling classified information, which, of course, that's what the Jack Smith investigation was about with respect to Donald Trump, where he knowingly took lots of classified information to return it. Did it back when it was taken from him, and still the Department of Justice has not released the Jack Smith special investigator, or rather special counsel report.
Shut up, you mealy-mouthed commie. And he is. He is a commie. His whole family's commie. And, you know, and the Jack Smith, and the irony of Donald Trump taking the President of the United States is the executive branch. And he has constitutional protections and immunities that nobody else has, including the vice president. We've been over this a lot. This buffoon was said to be a professor of constitutional law. And I've always said, well, which constitution? The old Soviet Stalinist Constitution of 1936? What are they talking about? Because he's a moron. Whether it comes to the 14th Amendment and the debt ceiling, the 14th Amendment, and removing presidential candidate Trump from the ballot. We've had to deal with this guy over and over and over again. He was involved in every impeachment. He was involved in every oversight committee, January 6th. He was involved in objecting to the elections of all Republicans, actually. The floor of the House. He is a wrecking ball. He's a dangerous man, Raskin the Red. And he doesn't even know what the hell he's talking about. Has no idea what he's talking about. But it doesn't matter. Media love him. Constipated News Network, MSLSD, doesn't matter. By the way, I have some advice that I'd like to give John Thune, and good man, and Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, great guy. I would run a commercial on TV, and I would have the roll call vote of all the senators. All the senators who voted no on the government, all the senators who voted yes. And, you know, I'm not all that worked up about this shutdown. I mean, country will survive, but let's embrace this whole moment, okay? And what they can do is say, these senators, all Democrats, have voted no for the 10th time on opening your United States government. And scroll down. These senators have voted yes on opening the United States government. And scroll down. Don't you think that would be powerful, Mr. Producer? I think it'd be pretty damn good. Other than, you know, health care, and, you know, you got health care, and then we got Obama, we got just black and white, nice and simple. We have a tremendous Life, Liberty, and Levin on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, we will have my opening statement, and I will have one guest. And I'm going to return to this format from time to time, which I started on Fox several years ago. I have these long-form interviews, as you know, usually with two guests, and we'll keep doing that, but I also want to intersperse that with one guest. And the one guest will be Victor Davis Hanson. I don't want guests who just bloviate and repeat themselves. We're not going to do, you know, color by the numbers, and we don't do that. I never do it, and I'm not going to start. But individual guests, whether they be authors, whether they be thinkers, whether they be politicians, whether they be businessmen, or whether they just be. If I think it'll bring something interesting to the table, I'm going to do it. And, of course, Victor Davis Hanson does and will, and it's going to be a fantastic discussion. None of these 5-minute hits with 3 guests. So I think you're going to enjoy that. 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. I know it's Thursday, but it'll be here soon. I encourage you all to set your DVRs. Sunday we have a great show too. Ben Domenech. I really think this guy is really unbelievable. And Brett Baer. When's the last time Brett Baer was on my program? Brett Baer does a lot of research and writing in history, and this is, of course, my forte, that and the Constitution. So we have a great time, and we're going to talk about, I think it's Theodore Roosevelt to some extent. So I think you're going to enjoy it. So, we're not going to do paint by the numbers. We're not going to have 47 and a half guests. 2 shows, 3 guests total. And me, myself, and I. I guess that's 6 of us then. One of the things you're going to notice, and you may notice that my reading's been a little bit off, is because I get a needle in my left eye. Look, I share this stuff with you. It's just the way it is. Macular degeneration in the retina in the left eye. Well, it turns out it's also happening in the right eye, unfortunately. So I've mentioned this before. I have some leakage of blood in the back of the retina in the left eye. It's been going on almost 6 years, so I get a needle every 6 weeks or so. And now it's started in the right eye. So you're going to see Saturday a very red right eye. No, I don't take drugs. No. I don't drink. No. I wasn't in a bar fight. I don't go to bars. It's just that. Just that. I want to play something for you. Do we have time? We do, but I don't want to rush this. Maybe I'll wait. Okay, we'll play it. Nate Friedman. I don't know Nate Friedman, but he's a brave young man. He's out in the street with these paid protesters, these radical protesters. Those protesters supporting Hamas, violent, vile, nasty people. And he focuses on a couple of ladies, and he demonstrates that these are paid protesters. And this is what they do for a living. And they're funded by the Samidoun, S-A-M-I-D-O-U-N fund, which is funded by another organization you're going to hear, which is funded in part by George Soros. And this is why our president is so focused on looking at who's funding these organizations, Antifa and so forth, that are seeking to overthrow our country. All these protests are not spontaneous. Like the Tea Party was spontaneous? None of this is spontaneous. It's all organized. It's all funded. It's dark money. They have multiple layers where they're trying to conceal the source of the money. Some of it's foreign governments. Some of it's billionaires overseas. Some of it's Hamas and other terrorist groups. Some of it's Qatar and other terrorist-sponsoring countries. Some of it is billionaires, homegrown, like this guy Soros and his son Alex Soros. You may ask, why? Why are they doing this? I don't care anymore why. They need to be exposed and stopped. And the IRS is one of the prime agencies that needs to look at this to determine whether there's tax fraud, because sometimes they set up nonprofit, charitable organizations, bipartisan organizations, for which there are special tax incentives and other ways to conceal what they're doing. So, of course, that needs to be investigated. Why would they be immunized? Why should they be immunized? So here's Nate Friedman with paid protesters. Listen carefully, because I want to address this after the break, too. Cut 21, go.
Do you want to see Israel destroyed?
Yeah.
You're Jewish.
I'm a long-time anti-Zionist.
Iran is funding Hamas and Hezbollah. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's a good thing to do?
Of course. I would love for them to assassinate Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, and Smotrich, especially Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. I don't care about Netanyahu. I would love for them to do that, yes.
Okay. Would you say that it's okay if millions of Jews died in that process to that pursuit?
Well, as long as the Israeli government is using them as hostages.
What do you do for work?
I don't.
You don't work? Why not?
I don't have to.
Now, I think she actually is working, and as a professional protester. Here's her protesting without her sunglasses on. She usually does have them on. Here's her saying HP profits from Israel's torture of Palestinian political prisoners. Here's her saying democracy is not for sale. Back again with the Palestine flag, and again with the South African flag. Now, it's not just her, as we know that they work in teams. Look at this blonde woman beside her. I found her at more protests than any other paid protester I've exposed in the past. I found her at close to 50 different protests, all within a couple of years. So who's behind this team of people chanting for Israel's destruction on America's streets? Their name is Samidoun. It's an organization based in Canada, and they are sanctioned by Canada as a terrorist group. In fact, in October of 2024, US and Canada issued joint statements listing Samidoun as a terrorist entity. Canada called them a sham to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is a Marxist organization that recognizes a one-state solution with no Israel. Germany banned the group after members of Samidoun passed out candy celebrating October 7th. The founder of Samidoun, at a rally in Vancouver, publicly called Hamas heroic on the 7th and said that Hamas and Hezbollah don't engage in terrorism. If you look at the photos of this woman I interviewed, they almost all come from Samidoun's website. Now, the Tides Foundation and the Tides Center is behind this, and you remember the chief donor of the Tides Foundation, George Soros. However, all you see is that the Alliance for Global Justice is their fiscal sponsor. But if you lift the hood, you see that Soros gives to Tides, Tides gives to AFGJ, which then gives to Samidoun. Soros, along with the New Venture Fund, gave more than $9 million to the AFGJ, which again is the fiscal sponsor of Samidoun. They want it to look complicated so you don't see this, but make no mistake, Soros is funding this. It is also important to note that you can't even donate to the AFGJ with Stripe or PayPal or any normal methods, as all of those companies consider them terrorists. Yet they are still walking the streets of New York City screaming for the downfall of America.
And these are the supporters of Mamdani. These are the funders of Mamdani. So when Bernie Sanders screams at the top of his lungs about benefits for billionaires, there are billionaires funding this, including George Soros. You'll notice Bernie Sanders never asked about George Soros. AOC's never asked about George Soros, Alex Soros, none of it. They never asked about the Tides Foundation, none of it. None of it. I'm bringing this up because there's an article, Trump administration plans IRS overhaul to probe left-leaning groups more easily, the Wall Street Journal reports. Plan includes installing Trump allies at criminal division and reducing lawyer involvement in probes. The Journal reported, citing people familiar with the matter, the push centers on installing Trump allies at the IRS Criminal Investigative Division and reducing the involvement of agency lawyers. Those changes could allow politically motivated probes to be pursued. They're being driven by Gary Shapley, an advisor to Treasury Secretary Bessent, according to the report. Now, shame on all these news entities for reporting like this. I just gave you an example of one of the problems. Soros is a Democrat. He's a sugar daddy for the Democrat, for all these left-wing organizations, for non-governmental organizations, trying to overthrow our country, trying to overthrow Israel. He tried to overthrow Britain, and so forth and so on. This is a very evil empire that they've got here. And he is a sugar daddy to the Democrat Party. The IRS has done nothing to look into this. So it's not a matter of Trump putting politicos in these positions in order to go after Democrats and liberals. This is a serious matter. This is way beyond Democrats and liberals. It is a very, very serious matter. And as you will learn on Saturday's Life, Liberty, and Levin, we've had Democrat presidents use the IRS to go after their political enemies all the time. Like Franklin Roosevelt, like John Kennedy, like Lyndon Johnson, like Barack Obama, and others. But even that aside, is it not important to get to the bottom of this funding of terrorist supporting groups, Marxist supporting groups, and their efforts to overthrow our country? Otherwise, what the hell good is any of this? But look how they put the spin on. Like it's just Trump going after his political enemies. They write the Trump administration has sought to investigate left-leaning groups. These aren't left-leaning groups. These are terrorist and Marxist groups that it believes are helping finance protests. The president believes is political violence in Democrat-controlled cities, while critics have said the push is politically motivated and lacks evidence. No, it doesn't lack evidence. The entrails are there. Same with Antifa. Same with Students for Justice in Palestine. Same with a whole bunch of these bastards. That's right. If the IRS is used to go after the NRA, which it was, the IRS is used to go after Tea Party groups, which it was. I mean, we're talking about completely different level here of abuse of power in politics. These are entities with ties to or promoting terror regimes and terror groups, and Marxist entities, communist enemies that seek the overthrow of the United States of America. And according to this report, we shouldn't know anything about it. The president shouldn't do anything about it because he might be called political. God bless this president. And I got to tell you, this Treasury Secretary, too, for digging into this. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, I have a question for you. Do you believe America's best days are still ahead? With the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence coming up in less than a year, my friends at the Heritage Foundation are taking stock of the current situation, and they need your input. They've launched a survey on America's future to gauge how Americans feel right now about where we are as a nation and where we're headed in the next 250 years. You know, for decades, your American values have been under attack, but now, with President Trump's administration in office, we have an opportunity to turn the tide and usher in a new golden age for America. But the Heritage Foundation needs to hear from you. What policies do patriots like you most care about? What do you believe are the defining principles of America? What legacy do you believe we should pass on to the next generation? Please visit heritage.org/Levin today and share your feedback and help shape the future of America. That's heritage.org/LEVIN. Paid for by the Heritage Foundation. Our friends at Breitbart, Joel Pollack, one of the best, headline, Students for Justice in Palestine backs Gaza executions. Death to collaborators. Now, this is a Hamas front group. It's being funded in the United States. It's on over 300 campuses. And they're supporting these Hamas butchers slaughtering Palestinians. They're being executed in the streets and in the fields. They're now hanging them publicly so everybody will see. They're slaughtering as many what they believe are challengers or competitors to their powers they possibly can. The national body of Students for Justice in Palestine backed Hamas's grisly public executions of fellow Palestinians in Gaza on Sunday, posting, quote, death to the occupation, death to the collaborators on Instagram. Got that? The call for executions followed the murder of a journalist known to critics as Mr. Fafo. But in any event, Students for Justice in Palestine officially, in a publicly released statement, backs the execution, the summary executions of Palestinians by Hamas. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Welcome, America. Yes, the only groups I know, certainly en masse and systematically, who are trying to overthrow the country are the Marxist Islamist groups. Now, there may be some other groups out there, but not like these groups. Not as well funded and organized as these groups. And if the Internal Revenue Service is either incapable of or unwilling to investigate them, then of course the president has to put his people, quote unquote, at the Internal Revenue Service. I think people don't understand, or certainly the media and the left don't care, how this government's supposed to work. He's the elected president. There's nothing about the IRS and the original Constitution. We created the Internal Revenue Code with an amendment, that is the income tax. But the president's in charge of the executive branch. And if people are trying to overthrow the country, and money's coming in from 15 different corners of the world and our country, and people are using a tax status to funnel the money, and the Internal Revenue Service is doing precious little about it, of course the president needs to have his people, quote unquote. Doesn't mean he's politicizing it. That is outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. What's being politicized is the so-called permanent government. That's the problem. Now we get to this issue of deportation. The Democrats now, they keep bouncing around different words. They think they found one, that Trump is militarizing our cities. No, they have criminalized our cities. Trump's not militarizing anything. The Insurrection Act was passed in 1807. It was first used in 1808 by Thomas Jefferson. In fact, the military was used by George Washington without any law to put down the Whiskey Rebellion. And it was used by John Adams, the second president. You may have heard of him. He was at the Constitutional Convention, as was Washington. And they were at the Second Continental Congress, where the Declaration of Independence was debated and adopted. They both were. So they may have known something about what they were doing. They used the military. But the military is not used nilly-willy. But I went back and looked at the history of the Insurrection Act. I studied it more than I had previously. And I want you to know, it's been used 28 times. 28 times, Mr. Producer. So when they talk about Donald Trump, that he might use the military and he's authoritarian, we've used the Insurrection Act against union violence. We've used the Insurrection Act against the Klan. We've used the Insurrection Act against segregationists in order to enforce Brown versus Board of Education. We used the Insurrection Act against rioters in the 1960s, against rioters in the 1980s. We've used the Insurrection Act for a whole host of things. For a whole host of things. We've used the Insurrection Act. Now, when you have an actual insurrection, and there's a definition for it that's broader than the word insurrection, but it doesn't matter for our purposes. That is, when you have a concerted, systematic effort by the Democrat Party through its local city councils and mayors and through its state governors to resist, to undermine, to defy federal immigration law. First, by declaring themselves sanctuary cities and states, which they are not free to do. They're still part of the Union. I know that Confederacy stuff runs deep in the Democrat Party. Certainly the ideology does, where they think they can nullify whatever they want to nullify. We don't want to comply with federal immigration law. Too damn bad. The word federal is key, and that power is plenary, meaning very broad. The power of the federal government, those powers are few, but they are powerful. Few, but powerful. This isn't about federalism. This isn't about state rights. The Constitution that was ratified by the original states determines that in terms of the distribution of power, immigration will be determined at the national level. The reason why Governor Abbott, who we adore, kept taking on Biden wasn't because he wanted to defy federal immigration law. It's because he wanted to enforce federal immigration law against a lawless federal government that refused. He was actually executing federal immigration law while the federal government was defying it in violation of multiple aspects of the Constitution. So cities and states aren't free to say, hey, I'm a sanctuary city and state, and therefore I'm not going to comply with federal immigration law, whether it's open borders, whether it is concealing illegal aliens, or whether it is defying the enforcement of the deportation orders. And they're not doing it because they're righteous. They're not doing it because they care about other human beings. The open borders resulted in God knows how much horror, with women sold into sex slavery and pornography, and little kids too. Unaccompanied minors, still hundreds of thousands missing. God knows what's happened to them. We know women have been raped. We know they've been brutalized. Same with men. Same with children. We know that the drug cartels have made tens of billions of dollars using them to carry drugs, blackmailing them to get them across the Rio Grande and other locations, effectively enslaving them. I mean, open borders, what a horrendous act of inhumanity. Now it comes to the enforcement. Donald Trump was elected to deport illegal aliens. Not just people who commit horrendous crimes, but illegal aliens. I don't care how much crocodile tears there are by the very people who created this situation. That would be the Democrats and their supporters and the illegal aliens themselves. Nobody dragged them into this country. The rules are the rules. The rules are the rules when you're an American citizen and if you break them. Ask John Bolton. And so, the president may be forced, and I think he's going to have to, trigger the Insurrection Act, and they'll try and create the narrative that he's, a dictator, an authoritarian. But the law's been used 28 times. 28 times. When Orval Faubus defied Brown versus Board of Education, Eisenhower nationalized, federalized the National Guard. He triggered the Insurrection Act. Was that an insurrection? No. But it was the right thing to do, wasn't it? When George Wallace did the same thing was done to him as was done to Faubus. And so now we have a situation where we again have governors and mayors who are blocking ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That's what ICE means. From doing their job, and in fact, using language and more than suggesting that illegal immigrants and others who support them rise up and in fact use violence against ICE and the administration. That's right. And yet Democrat after Democrat calls Trump an authoritarian, one after another. The militarization of our cities, they say. The same Democrats whose policies have resulted in God knows how many murders and rapes, other types of assaults. Many parts of our inner cities are unlivable, and everybody knows it. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, straight, gay, male, female, everybody knows it. You have no-go zones in our cities, but people live there. They have to send their kids to failing schools there. There's not enough cops there because the cities don't provide for them. That's right. Here's Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times on MSNBC. You notice the New York Times doesn't show up at Fox. It doesn't show up on conservative talk radio. They self-identify, if you will. Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times on MSNBC. Cut 10, go.
There's a phrase that people in the domestic violence world use when they're, and I think that there's a lot of ways in which understanding how domestic abusers operate gives you some insight into how Donald Trump operates. They say
there you go. Donald Trump is a domestic abuser. She thinks she's figured out a parallel example to apply here to project onto what's going on. Just sick. In fact, the domestic abuser was that guy Garcia. Remember him, Mr. Producer? Oh, yeah. And the Democrats came to his defense. And the Democrats used him as an example of why Trump shouldn't be able to deport Somebody like him? Guy was part of MS-13. Guy was involved in human trafficking. The guy had 2 complaints filed by his wife for abuse. We read one of them on the air. They're public. And the Democrats came to his defense. You would think Michelle Goldberg of the New York Slimes would be using that as an example in defense of what Donald Trump's trying to do. But no, she's a leftist and she's filled with hate. Go ahead.
Deflect, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So, whenever kind of this administration accuses someone of something, in a sense, it's always a confession. Their modus operandi is if they commit a crime and are held accountable.
You're an idiot. You're an idiot. You deserve to work for a Holocaust-denying newspaper, for a Hamas-supporting newspaper that put fake photos on the cover of its newspaper in order to try and turn more and more people against Jews in Israel, incite more violence. Yeah, that's the newspaper you work for, you moron. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Our society works because of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Everyday Americans should be able to speak openly and honestly about family and traditional values without retribution from the government. And that's a principle Pure Talk proudly supports. They sponsor my show, which allows me to stand strong behind the microphone every day and share the truth with you. If you want to support brands that defend freedom and pro-American values, I strongly encourage you to switch your wireless service to Pure Talk. You're going to get great 5G coverage on an extremely reliable and secure network, and with plans from just $25 a month, you'll save a ton of money. And Pure Talk also believes in creating American jobs and supporting America's small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, you can save even more while enjoying white glove service. Stand with the companies who share your values. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my favorite wireless company right now, Pure Talk, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/Levin. Make the switch, folks. Make it today. This guy Pritzker really has turned out to be a real slime ball, hasn't he? I mean, that's a real race between him and Newsom. 2 thoroughly despicable, immoral demagogues. Here's Pritzker at a press conference today with the, this is a power grab, authoritarianism. How is it a power grab when you're trying to enforce the deportation laws? How is that a power grab? By the way, Joe Rogan's out there trashing the administration for enforcing the immigration laws. Doesn't like the look, thinks it's crazy. Of course he is. I should talk about that guy more often, but we'll see. Plenty of time. A lot of time left. I signed an extension on my contract. I got years left, right, Mr. Producer? Assuming I'm not hit by a bus. Oh, yeah. Cut 8, go.
Trump is looking to cause mayhem and lay the foundation for actions far more craven. We cannot accept any of this.
This guy makes statements that are not based on fact in order to justify his lawlessness. He's violating the Constitution of the United States. That's what he's doing. He's violating the Constitution of the United States. Several parts of it, actually. He's acting like an old Confederate, in the sense that he's declared themselves a sanctuary state and city. He's nullifying federal immigration law and deportation requirements. He's seizing power from the federal government. Now, you can't have that. You can't have these mayors and these governors do this. And the Democrats are doing this almost as if they're coordinating. Gee willikers, I wonder if they are. They sound the same. They say the same thing. It's like a conga line. It's like a very ugly group of Rockettes, quite frankly. Can you imagine Pritzker in a bathing suit, Mr. Producer? My God, that would be ugly. Oh, I know. You're eating your steak sandwich? All right, sorry. I can't. I mean, it's almost too much to imagine. Go ahead, please.
It's normal. And we cannot remain silent. We must continue.
You can't remain silent because you have a big mouth. and you need every orifice you can to relieve yourself. And we cannot remain silent. You never shut the hell up. You have a bigger mouth than Newsom, and that guy's got a big mouth. By the way, you see Newsom's hands? Massive. Massive. And I was the first to notice. I don't know why I'm the first to know. Hell, he keeps swinging him around and waving him around like he's Bill Clinton. Just weird. He's a weirdo. He's a freak and a fraud. Anyway, back to the other freak and fraud. Pritzker. Go ahead.
All this, what it is, a dangerous power grab.
Okay, dangerous power grab. So if you're talking to somebody who's already over the edge, on the roof, trying to figure out how to go out with a bang, and they listen to Pritzker day after day, night after night, and they listen to Newsom day after day and night after night, what do you think goes through their head? What do you think goes through their head? And then when something happens, these guys, gun control, gun control. How about they control their big fat mouths? You can have a disagreement without this. You're a governor. You want to be president. You sound like a punk. This fat slob is a punk. Go ahead.
Echoes the rise of authoritarianism.
Shut up, you jerk. Echoes the rise of authoritarianism. You got the IQ of a snail and the appetite of an elephant. It's not very pretty if you ask me. Guy looked like he has walked into many walls. May I say that with all due respect? Then we have Rachel Madcow over at MSLSD. I think she gets paid $114 billion for 14 minutes of TV time. Oh, yeah. And it's all worth it. She pushed that Russian conspiracy for 2-3 years. Was all a fraud. Now she doesn't talk about it at all. Of course not. Because she's a fraud. Whatever the Democrat talking line is, she's in that line, baby. She's marching. She's clicking her heels. She's wearing the right shirts. There she is. That's what she's doing. Here she is on MSLSD. Cut 9, go.
We got to think about this task that's ahead of us right now. I mean, we have an authoritarian government in this country that is trying to destroy the democracy. And
we have an authoritarian government trying to destroy the democracy. Now, she supported packing the Supreme Court with ideologues, turning it into a left-wing Democrat Politburo. Now, she supported open borders, destroying the whole idea of sovereignty and citizenship and our democracy, a.k.a. republic. Doesn't push for assimilation. She supported the 1619 Project, which is a rejection of our founding. She supports CRT, another rejection of our founding. She has accused the framers of the Constitution of being white supremacists. Sound like somebody who supports democracy? She opposes the Electoral College. She wanted Trump removed from the ballot. And I could go on and on about Miss Democracy here. Miss Democracy, worried about authoritarianism. Worried about authoritarianism. They're the authoritarians. That's what they do. They project. They call you what they are. They call you what they are. I'll be right back. Our society works because of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Everyday Americans should be able to speak openly and honestly about family and traditional values without retribution from the government. And that's a principle Pure Talk proudly supports. They sponsor my show, which allows me to stand strong behind the microphone every day and share the truth with you. If you want to support brands that defend freedom and pro-American values, I strongly encourage you to switch your wireless service to Pure Talk. You're going to get great 5G coverage on an extremely reliable and secure network, and with plans from just $25 a month, you'll save a ton of money. And Pure Talk also believes in creating American jobs and supporting America's small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, you can save even more while enjoying white glove service. Stand with the companies who share your values. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my favorite wireless company right now, Pure Talk, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/Levin. Make the switch, folks. Make it today.
Mark Levin, Liberties, General Patton. Call into the Mark Levin Show now at 877-381-3811.
So Trump the authoritarian, before that it was Trump Hitler, the supporters are neo-Nazi. It's just the same drumbeat. And the amazing thing is you and I, we find all this authoritarian stuff that they try to project onto us unconscionable, immoral, repulsive. We fight it every day. Every day. We are constitutionalists. We believe in limited power, divided power, specified power, and the rest of it is left to we, the people, as individuals. You know, our side is a mixture of conservatives, constitutionalists, libertarians, and so forth and so on. We don't always agree on everything, that's for sure, but we come at it from a particular perspective, one that is set forth concisely in the Declaration of Independence. Individual liberty, God-given unalienable rights for every human being. Equality, meaning equality under the law, a just law, not equality in outcomes. They certainly never believe that, neither do I. We have our principles, our belief systems, the Judeo-Christian religious and principles and values and belief systems on which this nation was founded. We embrace them. Whether those of you listening are Jewish or Christian or atheist or whatever you are, it doesn't matter. That's what the nation is based on, and thank God for that. That's why we're a beneficent nation. That's why we tolerate different points of view and debate. That's why we have a Bill of Rights that protects the individual in so many instances from the government. We come at this from that perspective, from the perspective of the people who founded this nation, from the perspective of the ancients, the Aristotles and the Ciceros, the Locks and the Montesquieux. That's our perspective, not them. Their perspective is Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Their perspective is Hegel and Rousseau. Their perspective is Woodrow Wilson and the American Marxist progeny of Karl Marx, that is so-called self-identified and misidentified progressives. That's right. We have truly two incompatible views of the world. Theirs is authoritarian. There is, in so many respects, totalitarian. Listen to how they speak. They speak like the very people who they claim to reject, but they don't reject. Mamdani is the modern-day Fidel Castro. Bernie Sanders is the old-time Brezhnev. I mean, these are people who reject Americanism and constitutionalism. Even though they wave it around, they reject it. They want to use it to grab power, retain power, expand power. That's who they are. That's why I wrote the book on power, by the way. But this is who they are. Somehow we're eroding their freedoms. Somehow you and I reject the electoral process. Somehow we who believe in law and order are the lawless. You and I, who understand and respect the division of power between the federal government and the state governments and the state and the city governments. They want to centralize it all, and they want to control it all, and they want an iron fist. And yet you and me, we are said to be the anti-small d Democrats. You know, in this nation, your great nation was founded, there were the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. I've touched on this before, but it's worth repeating. Just because I remember it doesn't mean everybody else does. I get it. Now, the Federalists are said to believe in what? Federalism. State power. More than central national power. The Anti-Federalists are said to be individuals who support more of a powerful national government. But even back then, not so clever, but clever enough. The Federalists, stick with me, were actually the Anti-Federalists. And the Anti-Federalists were actually the Federalists. See, the Federalists, who met, many of them, in Philadelphia and designed the Constitution, the Federalists, not the Federalist Party, the Federalists ideologically, or more accurately, philosophically, they claimed that they were the Federalists, but they weren't. They were developing a central government, a national government. They were throwing out the Articles of Confederation. Now, I happen to agree with what they were doing, but that's not my point. We're discussing philosophy, and we're discussing more than that, what took place. Now, the Anti-Federalists, they wrote the Anti-Federalist Papers, by the way. I have that volume, too. It's fantastic. Both of them are fantastic. When you really see the level of debate, the substance of it, the smarts that these men had, some of them extremely well educated, some of them are educated just on their own, many of them, but brilliant. The Anti-Federalists, who are actually the Federalists, who opposed the Constitution, they went on about their concern about the judiciary, that it was too ambiguous what was discussed, and you would have a judicial tyranny. Boy, they were right. And so they rejected parts of the Constitution because they feared that it wasn't enough to control power, the centralization of power. And then you had the Federalists who wrote the Federalist Papers, three men, Madison, Hamilton, John Jay, but mostly Hamilton and Madison, who wrote the Federalist Papers that are crucially important. The description of what they were doing, the reason why certain provisions were there, in order to counter skeptics and opponents. When I read the Federalist Papers, which I still do, and the Anti-Federalist Papers, none of the ideology embraced by the Democrat Party is in either of them. The Democrat Party has embraced alien, that is, foreign ideologies. Marxism is not an American ideology. It was born in Europe. Marxism is an ideology that rejects religion and God. Your Declaration of Independence embraces it. So does the Enlightenment, which is also part of your founding. The Democrat Party embraces neither. Now, they exploit both, waving around a constitution that they claim is illegitimate, waving around a constitution that they claim does not apply in all respects to them. So they try and get around the text of the Constitution or the original meaning of the Constitution, or they trash the framers of the Constitution, right? And then they wave it around. And then they claim they're the ones who believe in constitutional government. I'm on to them, which is why they hate me. I'm on to them, which is why some conservatives and constitutionalists, even some MAGA, they don't understand what's going on. I do. Completely. This is what I do. I'm almost obsessed with it. Figuring these things out. So when you have people like Michelle Goldberg at the New York Slimes, Rachel Maddow at MSLSD, Pritzker, Newsom, these other frauds, phonies, and fools, these demagogues, these propagandists going on and on about authoritarianism, going on, claiming that they represent little d democracy in the Constitution. And when they say that, by the way, you can tell they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Democracy was the enemy of the founders. They wanted republicanism, representative government, not democracy. Notice we don't have a parliament. Notice our Congress has divided powers, the Senate and the House. They went to great lengths to explain this. Obviously, too much for people at the New York Times to comprehend and digest. We're not a democracy. We're also not a Marxist regime or a socialist regime. We're the greatest republic ever established, ever. For reasons that the Democrat Party rejects. And certainly the Marxists and the Islamists. Their ideology is utterly, and I've said it and I've written about it, incompatible with the Declaration and the Constitution, incompatible with our civil society, our tolerance for individual liberty and individual rights and property rights. You don't hear Mamdani talk about individual rights, property rights, because he doesn't believe in them. He believes in the collective. And even worse, the centralization of the collective. And even worse, a handful of ideologues, not even experts, 33-year-olds, 34-year-olds, ideologues, have the power to say who can do what and who shall live as they decide they shall live. And that's how you get to these deadly regimes. Because that's not human nature. Human nature is live and let live within parameters. Ordered liberty. That's human nature. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Our society works because of the freedoms guaranteed by the First Amendment. Everyday Americans should be able to speak openly and honestly about family and traditional values without retribution from the government. And that's a principle Pure Talk proudly supports. They sponsor my show, which allows me to stand strong behind the microphone every day and share the truth with you. If you want to support brands that defend freedom and pro-American values, I strongly encourage you to switch your wireless service to Pure Talk. You're going to get great 5G coverage on an extremely reliable and secure network, and with plans from just $25 a month, you'll save a ton of money. And Pure Talk also believes in creating American jobs and supporting America's small businesses. So if you're a small business owner, you can save even more while enjoying white glove service. Stand with the companies who share your values. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/Levin to switch to my favorite wireless company right now, Pure Talk. And you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, puretalk.com/Levin. Make the switch, folks. Make it today. Obama-appointed federal judge says she wants body cameras for federal agents amid Chicago anti-ICE clashes. May I ask you a question about this judge, Sarah Ellis? Expresses concerns about compliance with previous orders banning certain riot control tactics. You notice I didn't give you a list of judges interfering with presidential decisions related to the Insurrection Act or the enforcement of federal law. Did you notice that? Because there are almost none. This is new. This is new, where we have a judiciary at the trial court level that is populated with, that is loaded with saboteurs, Democrat Party operatives with law degrees. And they pushed them on the bench as fast as they could during the Biden era and before Obama. This judge has no authority to force the president to tell ICE agents to wear body cameras. None whatsoever. None. She has no authority to do that at all. So where's that come from? While they wave around the Constitution, they'll tell you that this is required by the Constitution. Of course it's not. That's absurd. And yet that's what she's pushing. And I can go through all these judges and their absurd opinions. President has the authority to enforce laws. That's the executive branch, the execution of the laws. We have 700-800 of these judges that are going to sit down there and second guess. Where's that in your Constitution? I can assure you of one thing. I know for a fact, not a single state would have ratified a Constitution that gave this kind of authority to individual federal judges who didn't even exist at the time. Okay? None. None. So who is it that's anti-small d Democratic and is for authoritarianism? These judges, the Democrat Party. They may not like what's going on, but that's their problem. That's their problem. President has the right to enforce immigration law, and that includes deporting illegal aliens. And if cities and states, under whatever nomenclature they come up with, sanctuary cities or whatever, or they're opposed to the quote-unquote militarization of our cities, although they certainly support the criminalization of their cities, it doesn't matter what these tin-horn politicians have to say. The Constitution is the Constitution. It's the rule of law. And this is exactly what I mean. We're the ones who stand up for the Constitution. They're the ones who rip it up and burn it up. Just because they sound righteous, just because they use these horrible names to call their opponents, doesn't mean they're upholding the Constitution. In fact, they're not. They're violating it. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, hello, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Two great Life, Liberty, and Levins this weekend, Saturday. I think you're going to love my opening statement, and then I have one guest, Victor Davis Hanson, for the entire program. He's worthy of it. Very compelling. And then Sunday, Ben Domenech, one of the really young guns, in my view. And Brett Baer's back. He hasn't been on the program in over a year. We'll have a nice chat with him. He's got a very good, mind on history. He spends a lot of time researching it, studying it, and reading it. So what's going to happen to the Trump peace plan in Gaza? Hamas is slaughtering Palestinians. I see no protests in the streets about the murderous mayhem against these Palestinians, these innocent citizens. I see nothing going on at Columbia or Harvard or UCLA. I hear nothing out of Dearbornistan. I hear nothing from the imams speckled throughout the country. Nothing. I hear nothing from Mehdi Hassan, the Jew-hating puke. I hear nothing from any of these people. I hear nothing from CARE. Or if you do hear something, it's always gauged in a certain way, couched in a certain way. But I heard nothing. I've heard nothing. Nothing. From the leadership of the Democrat Party, I've heard nothing from Tlaib and Omar and AOC and Sanders, Van Hollen, the other reprobates. Not a word. Nothing. From Cory Booker. From Tim Kaine. Nothing. Why? I hear nothing from Katarlson. I hear nothing from Third Reich Bannon. I hear nothing from Knucklehead Owens. I hear nothing from these people. Why is that? Why is it? Now, it'll be the Israelis who are going to have to be called on to save the day, of course, and try and destroy Hamas. That's why you've heard nothing. All those people I mentioned about the black Christians being slaughtered in Africa, their daughters and women of the men being enslaved, raped. You don't hear anything about that either. You don't hear anything about it. You don't hear anything about the Muslims slaughtered in Yemen, the Muslims slaughtered in Syria, do you? By the Islamist jihadis. Not a word. Why is that? Or how about the Coptic Christians that are slaughtered in Egypt? What's left of them? You don't hear about that either. You don't hear about the Persian people. You keep hearing we want to work with their government. But the Persian people hate that government. 90% of them would like to overthrow that government. They're not 7th century throwbacks. How come we don't hear about that? They've executed 1,000 people since the end of the humiliating loss of the war against Israel and Iran and the United States. You don't hear about any of it, do you? How come the Security Council hasn't met at the UN to deal with Hamas? Were there resolutions in the UN condemning Hamas? Nothing. Zero. This phase 2 was always the issue. I told you behind this microphone. I told you on Blaze. I told you on Fox for the last 2 weeks. What happens to Hamas? Who's going to disarm Hamas? Who's going to demilitarize Gaza? Where are the Muslim and Arab countries? Where is this international force? If they're not ready, then why were the Israelis required to pull back? Now, the genius of this was phase 1 released the hostages. They're still withholding hostage bodies. So they've already violated phase 1. They're clearly not interested in phase 2. And so I have an idea. I call it phase 3. Now, it wasn't in writing that it was understood. It's made clear by the president. Phase 3 is if Hamas doesn't comply, we eviscerate them, we obliterate them, we exterminate them like cockroaches. They're terrorists. That's phase 3. Part of the contract, but oral contract. Here we have from Israel Yahom, excellent media source in Israel, and like Haaretz, which is radical left-wing Marxist Islamist, self-hating Israelis who own and work on that newspaper. It's grotesque, but that for another day. And so here they write, Arab and American sources have confirmed that the Sunni Axis, which also includes Bahrain, has warned the White House that the Trump Gaza plan is in danger of falling apart. As long as Hamas retains its weapons, we will not continue with the process, the message states. Communications sent to Washington argue that the leniency shown by mediators has allowed the terrorist organization to evade its obligations. Now, who are the mediators? Qatar, Turkey, and Egypt. And who are the people warning the president? Bahrain, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. I told you they all don't get along. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain are warning the White House that Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt are not doing much. They're allowing the terrorist organization to evade its obligations due to what they describe as the mediator's leniency regarding Hamas's refusal to disarm. That's right. Now, Arab and U.S. diplomatic sources confirmed to Israel Hayom, that messages to this effect were sent by the Gulf states of the moderate Sunni access to the White House and to the architect of the Gaza plan, architects. That would be Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. The warnings focus on Hamas's conduct since the ceasefire began, including the systematic assassination of rivals from competing clans, armed displays in the streets, extortion of local merchants, and statements by senior officials flatly rejecting the prospect of disarmament. You know, my monologues on Saturday and Sunday and the week before were really right on, were they not? In fact, Mr. Producer, maybe for tomorrow as a treat, let's pull, if we can, my monologue last Saturday and last Sunday on Fox, if we could. In their latest communication with Washington, the Saudis warned that unless there is a decisive U.S. response and a change in approach by the mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. See, the problem is those countries, particularly Qatar and Turkey, are sympathetic to Hamas. To enforce the plan's terms on Hamas, Saudi Arabia will not participate in the continuation of the process. A Saudi diplomatic source, confirmed to Israel Hayom, the newspaper, that such messages were delivered to the Americans. Remember, this is a Middle Eastern newspaper, an Israeli newspaper. He said that for months, Saudi Arabia has made clear its position. There's no viable solution to the war in Gaza or to the future of the Palestinians in general as long as Hamas remains part of the equation. Quote, this organization has inflicted enormous harm on the Palestinian people, a war that led to the deaths of tens of thousands of its own, the destruction of the entire Gaza Strip, and now it insists on preserving the Muqawama, armed resistance. He added, did the Saudi, that it is a resistance that has caused a catastrophe, even worse than Nakaba. It is absolutely clear that Hamas will sabotage any force, Palestinian, Arab, or international. This is the Saudi, seeking to restore order in the Strip. As long as there is no serious move to eliminate Hamas's influence and control over Gaza, there is no chance of its rehabilitation and reconstruction. The Saudis are right. The Saudis cannot stand the Qataris. The Emiratis, UAE, the Emiratis have expressed a similar stance, but since they are already investing considerable resources in aiding Gaza's displaced, their warnings are focused on areas under Hamas's control. According to their messages, they will continue rebuilding efforts in the southern parts of the Strip, where Israel maintains military control. See, where Israel, the Jews, maintain military control, those are the safe spots. However, they have made clear that they will not participate in reconstructing other areas unless a framework is in place for Hamas's disarmament and for full civilian and security control by international forces, as outlined in the Trump plan. Several prominent Arab leaders were notably absent from the Sharm el-Sheikh summit held on the eve of the holiday, including the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Emirati ruler Mohammed bin Zayed. Trump noted their absence during a speech, as previously reported to Israel Hayom. The two leaders chose not to attend the ceremonial event hosted by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, partly due to the return of Qatar, a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, to center stage. You think my criticisms of Qatar have been wildly off target, ladies and gentlemen? No, bullseye, bullseye, bullseye again. Though the Saudis did not mention Qatar by name in their messages to the Americans, they warned that increasing the influence of countries that destabilize the region would derail the momentum of prosperity the president has touted. In his speeches in the Knesset and Sharm, they call Sharm el-Sheikh, Trump spoke of an end to an era of terror and hatred. Yet at the same time, his people are elevating those who use their wealth and media outlets, like Al Jazeera, to promote hatred and terrorism, a senior Arab diplomat told Israeli Hayom bitterly. Earlier this week, Israel Hayom revealed, citing again a Saudi source, that Qatar was expected to help Hamas maintain its presence and return at an opportune moment. Excuse me. Those warnings are now being echoed in official and semi-official Saudi messages. The paper also previously reported that the Saudis would not engage meaningfully in Gaza as long as there was even one Kalashnikov, a rifle, in Hamas's hands. Bin Salman is expected to visit Washington next month. If the visit proceeds, his meeting with Trump is expected to be particularly significant. And it goes on. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I understand my rhino friend, he is my friend, he's a rhino, Hugh Hewitt, I mean, who in 1976 would have backed Gerald Ford against Ronald Reagan? But, you know, we all have our mistakes. He's a good man, a friend of ours, as I said, but he's a rhino. He's also pretty anti-Netanyahu. He keeps pushing for the sort of the rhinos of Israel, even the left. The ouster of Netanyahu. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure anybody in Israel is going to be caring or giving a thought about it. But I just point this out. I point this out to you, not because of him, but because this is sort of par for the course for American observers and commentators who aren't really deeply into this, and certainly the par for the course for the isolationists who hate Netanyahu. But I have some bad news for my buddy Hugh and the others. This is from the Jewish News Service. Netanyahu's approval ratings at all-time high. At all-time high. According to the latest direct poll survey conducted by Filber in the wake of the release on Monday of the remaining 20 hostages held in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's approval ratings are at their highest since the elections in November 2022. So why would he step aside, Hugh? You got to inform yourself about this stuff. The results of the poll were published on Wednesday, that would be yesterday, by Israel's Channel 14. Where suitability to serve as prime minister is concerned, the poll revealed that 58% of Israelis favor Netanyahu. 22% favor his closest rival, Naftali Bennett. 11% favor former minister without portfolio, Gadi Eisenkot. 4% favor opposition leader, former Prime Minister Yair Lapid. 4%. 4% favor Yisrael Beitenu party, led by Abador Lieberman. This guy has stabbed Netanyahu in the back 1,000 times. And 1% favor National Unity Party head Benny Gantz, who many people in our country keep pushing for a prime minister, but the Israelis don't want him. So Netanyahu's at 58%. 58%. The closest is this Naftali Bennett, who's at 22%. The poll also found that if elections were held today, Netanyahu's ruling coalition would win a 66-seat majority. And by the way, that is huge in Israel. It is huge. 2 more seats than it won in the 2022 elections. Opposition parties would garner 43 seats, and the anti-Zionist Arab parties would receive 11 seats. So it's a big deal. So why, Hugh, are you so anti-Netanyahu, and why do you think that the people of Israel don't support him? You see, the radical left in Israel play to this. There they were in Tel Aviv. And Steve Witkoff, to his credit, among other things, praised Netanyahu, and there was a big boo. And the reporters were, oh, look at this, the people of Israel rising up, the people of Israel oppose him. Tel Aviv, that would be like giving a speech in the streets of Los Angeles. Tel Aviv is where the left and the left wing in Israel, that's their base. It's the second biggest city, but there are other cities. Jerusalem is the biggest city. It's a conservative city. You have Judea and Samaria with 500,000 people. They are conservatives. I could go on and on and on. And the people who led those boos, by the way, the organizations that organized it and funded it, are Trump haters. They've always been Trump haters. Now, they claim to be Trump supporters now, but they're not. They claim to be Trump supporters because they're Netanyahu haters. And these people have been around long before the October 7th war began. Long before. I'll be right back.
The one-man antidote for liberal media bias. Mark Levin. Call him now at 877-381-3811.
There was a town hall on CNN yesterday. Nobody saw it, so we're playing clips of it because nobody watches CNN. That's right. Nobody. And there was Bernie Sanders with his big fat mouth going on, and there was a regular American in the audience who kind of stuck it to Bernie, didn't he, Mr. Producer? Cut 2, go.
How do you think this shutdown reflects on Chuck Schumer's leadership?
Well, I think it reflects more on Mike Johnson's leadership and President Trump's leadership. This is a leadership which said it's okay to give well, how do you feel? You tell me. Think it's a good idea to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the richest people in the country and then make massive cuts to health care for working class people?
I think Chuck Schumer has voted for continuing resolutions 13 times in the last 4 years, and he has the opportunity to vote for one again, but he's refusing to come to the table.
Well, I think, look, as I have said, there are 53 Republicans in the Senate, correct?
Yes.
They need 60. What does that mean? It means you have to talk to the other side. Mike Johnson is not talking. John Thune is not talking. President Trump is not talking. That is the problem.
Boy, that was a non-answer, wasn't it, Rich? This young man really nailed him. The billionaires and it is... Shut up, you old man. You voted for it before, but you're not voting for it this time. Well, you have to talk to talk to anybody. This was a simple up and down vote. Imagine talking to this idiot, Sanders. I can't. Well, he won't talk to us. We've invited him on here time and time and time again. He only goes where he's comfortable. That's where he is. Let's go to John Fetterman. I got to be honest with you, folks. I like him a lot. I'm not interested in whether his record is perfect or not. I like him a lot. I tell you the truth as I see it. Obviously, I opposed him in the general election. But he's turned out to be quite a remarkable senator. He really has. And they're going to try and primary him with a leftist and take him out. And we will support him in the Democrat primary. Well, if it hurts him, I'll keep my mouth shut. But if it helps him, I'll open my mouth. He was on News Nation yesterday. Cut 4, go.
Shutting the government is really what the Democratic Party wants to do. And I follow country, then party. And it's the wrong thing for the country in a period of chaos. I refuse to vote to shut our government down. I absolutely would love to have...
See what he said? Country first, not party first. That's why he's an outlier in the Democrat Party, which is party first, like the Communist Party. Go ahead.
Extending the tax credits for health care. Absolutely. But I would remind everybody, too, this was designed by the Democratic Party to expire at the end of the year. This is not something taken by the Republicans. They were designed to expire. Now let's have a conversation to extend it and not shut our government down.
And the Republicans have said, okay, you got to vote to open the government, and we will have this debate in a vote. And the Democrats are saying, no, we want a guaranteed outcome. See what I mean? Oh, democracy. Democracy. You do what we say or else. More John Fetterman. Cut 5, go.
And now a lot of the things, the extremism that people turned their back in 24, and that's how we kind of came up short. I campaigned for thousands and thousands of miles across Pennsylvania for Vice President Harris. And it was going to be incredibly difficult. You could just feel the energy there. And people really have connected there at a very fundamental level. And that's what I tried to explain to my party. And I'm trying to explain to the party right now. It's like, this is why we lost. And this is where we need to be to continue to win for these things. And there are parts of extreme things emerging clearly on those things. And that's why I refuse to follow that, even if that is going to cost me support in parts of the base.
I tell you, I like this guy. I do. Cut 6, go.
I'm the only Democrat in my family. I grew up in a conservative part of Pennsylvania, and I grew up and I know and I love people that voted for President Trump. But they are not fascists. They're not Nazis. They're not trying to destroy the Constitution and those things. And that's part of another thing. I refuse to call people Nazis or fascists, or I would never compare anybody anybody to Hitler and those things. And now that kinds of extreme rhetoric is going to continue. We're going to be more likely in resulting in extreme kind of outcomes and political violence and doing all these kinds of things like Charlie Kirk. For me, all I could say is like, let people grieve. Give people the space. I'm not going to use that terrible thing and that Pasek assassination to make my argument and try to put out my views. It's like, my God, he's a father that had his neck blown out by a bullet. And now people have forgotten. President Trump in my state, was shot in the head. And if that could you imagine where our nation would be if he was hit in the same way with Kirk? We really got to turn the temperature down.
Don't you like this guy, Rich? I really like him. I mean, compare him to, these other guys. Bernie Sanders. Or this guy, Chris Murphy from Connecticut. Or Pritzker. Or Newscomb. It's a genuine man. I grew up with Democrats like this in Pennsylvania. That's what I mean. I grew up with guys like this. You could talk to them, you could debate them, and so they weren't out to destroy the country. They weren't Islamists, they weren't Marxists, they weren't quote-unquote democratic socialists. They rejected all this. They were moderate Democrats, Pennsylvania Democrats. That's what they were. Many of their families were blue-collar. And that's what works in Pennsylvania. This extremism stuff does not work in Pennsylvania. It doesn't work with Republicans or Democrats. Now, it may work in parts of Philadelphia, no question, parts of Pittsburgh, but the statewide, no. You got a lot of Democrats who are union members, and I'm not talking about the teachers' unions and stuff like that, who are cops and firefighters, who are coal miners, steel workers, truck drivers, who love Donald Trump. And they're very conservative. They favor the Second Amendment. They favor the death penalty. Many of them are Catholic and oppose abortion. These are the people that make this country work and function. They're not radicals who were bartenders. Not that all are, so excuse me, but you get my point. They're not communists from Vermont. They're not supporters of the Palestinians, quote unquote, like Talib. They actually support Israel. That's how you have a Jewish governor in Pennsylvania who's, by the way, who is just terrible. I'm sorry, Zito, my dear friend, I'm just sorry. He poses as a moderate, but he's not a moderate, in my humble opinion. In my humble opinion. But if you're a radical Democrat, you're not going to get elected statewide in Pennsylvania. I'll tell you that right now. I've gone that state when I was young. I was a young Turk. I went from one end of the state to the other, promoting Ronald Reagan in 76 and 80, other conservative candidates. We had young Turks who moved the Republican Party. We used to say the state animal is the rhino, RINO, for the Republicans. And I fought all the liberal Republicans, and there were many. They told me Reagan couldn't win. Of course, Reagan won two blowout landslides when he was on the ballot finally and could run once he got the nomination. But this is what Fetterman grew up around. His family was fairly wealthy. He was lieutenant governor. And I think he's actually become far more moderate than he was when he started out. I really do. He was much more liberal, but I think he's seen things. In a way, he's grown up. I don't mean as a man. He was always a man. But I mean he's grown up from a philosophical perspective, more rational perspective. I like him. And he likes you. You heard what he said. These people aren't Nazis. I want to do one other thing here. I want you to listen to a guy named Ahmad Fawad Akatib. He's a pro-Palestinian activist. And he was on CNN today, a pro-Palestinian activist. I want you to hear what he had to say. Cut 16, go.
You are a proud Palestinian who has been fighting very hard for those things that he talked about, justice and safety. What do you make of that answer?
Very disappointing. Look, I'm not...
All right, let me set this up properly. He's talking about Mamdani's answer where on Fox he literally refused to demand that Hamas disarm. He refused to condemn Hamas as it's slaughtering Palestinians, executing them, hanging them, rounding them up, beating them, torturing them. Now let's start at the top. 16, please, go.
You are a proud Palestinian who has been fighting very hard for those things that he talked about, justice and safety. What do you make of that answer?
Very disappointing. Look, I'm not in the business of commenting on mayoral races. However, it should be straightforward and low-hanging fruit to say that a terror organization that harmed the Palestinians should be able to disarm. Claiming that you don't have an opinion on international and foreign relations, while at the same time saying you will arrest Bibi Netanyahu, that's a contradiction to me. You should be able to definitively distance the just and urgent Palestinian people's aspirations from Hamas. I was very disappointed, very disturbed by the rhetoric. And again, this is symptomatic of a larger trend within the so-called pro-Palestine movement that exists in the diaspora.
What he's saying there is, it's really plain English. The Islamist jihadists are winning out even among the Palestinians. And make no mistake about it, Mamdani is among the jihadist Islamists. I saw a Democrat who used to work for Obama, I actually forget his name, Robert something or other, on my favorite cable network. And he's Jewish. He's defending Mamdani. He's making excuses for Mamdani. He's going to support and vote Mamdani. And I said, therein is the problem right there. There are people who put party first no matter what. No matter what. You ask me how Jews can vote for somebody like this? That's how they do it. Party first. Fetterman said it. Party first. That's all that matters. And if you come out of this Obama administration, the Obama campaigns, he's the one who really started all this. He is. Bill Clinton didn't start this. Bill Clinton was considered a moderate, Southern Democrat, Southern governor, and he was fairly moderate as Democrats go as president. Not so with Obama. Obama's a bomb thrower. Always has been. He blew up the Democrat Party. He did it. And here it is now, where you literally have left-wing Jews who worked for Obama endorsing a man who won't condemn Hamas, which seeks the extermination of Jews. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Let's go to my old neighborhood, Jenkintown, Pennsylvania, right next to Cheltenham. That is Elkins Park, where I grew up. My parents had a little store in Jenkintown. Pete, on the Levin app, how are you, my friend, and how's Jenkintown?
It's doing well, Mark. Very well. Hey, I'd like to move on to Phase 3 yesterday. I think you're right about that.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we've had 15 presidents, Mark, that have invoked the Insurrection Act. And as you said, Washington and Adams didn't have the Insurrection Act, but they did call out the militia. I'd like to highlight some of the luminaries who were authoritarians.
Before we lose our signal here, go for it.
Yeah, let's go with Woodrow Wilson. How about FDR? How about JFK? How about LBJ? Tremendous authoritarians. Mm-hmm. And let me just say, we have 4 presidents, Buchanan, Carter, Obama, and Biden, 4 of the worst presidents in our nation's history. They didn't invoke the Insurrection Act.
That's a brilliant point. Brilliant point. My brother from Jenkintown, Pennsylvania. Fantastic memories. Call again, Pete. Call again. We salute our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, emergency personnel, our truckers, the men and women in Ukraine. Give them the tomahawks. The men and women of Israel. Let them destroy Hamas once and for all. And the men and women of the United States, you make it all possible. God bless you. See you tomorrow.